Hello and welcome to GameBurst Unplugged, your monthly dose of everything to do with ball games and card games. Joining me, as usual, this month we have Andy Duncan.
It's not there.
Hello.
There's a big delay. and Joel
Sorry.
Wright.
Yeah, good evening.
Right, and I'm obviously Gary, it's a two-player, but known as Zan. So this month we're going to be reviewing XCOM, the board game, but before that we're going to just talk a little bit about what we've been playing. So Andy is on a phone in a hotel, which may or may not die any minute, so we'll let him go first. So Andy, what game have you been playing?
Well, as you hinted, being in a hotel, I'm limited for space. So the game I want to talk about actually wasn't one of my games that I took with me. So last week I was in Bucharest in Romania and just having a wander about as I do on my lunch break. And I happened to come across a couple of guys holding a bunch of cards and having a bit of a debate with each other. So moseyed on over and in their best Romanian, they asked me if I wanted to play, to which I promptly replied in the best Romanian in the world, sorry, mate, I'm English. And they were playing Ascension. So they invited me in to play the classic that is Ascension, which is a deck building card game. It was good fun. A lot of strategy as to where you want to put your money in first and what sort of cards you want to get. But all in all, thoroughly enjoyable.
Do yourself a favour, play the iOS version. It's one of those rare cases where the electronic version is even better than the tabletop one.
To be perfectly honest, after we'd finished playing, I went and bought that, and it's very good.
Yeah, because there's quite a lot of sort of upkeep and fiddling around you have to do with the tabletop game. Did you have? Did he bling out his gems, or did he have the bog standard plasticky one? Okay. Well, I think Andy's phone disappears down the toilet. It's Joel. You want to talk about Black Fleet?
Yes, Black Fleet. It was brought out by Space Cowboys last year, and I picked it up. I was told it's a light version of Merchants and Marauders, which is kind of another pirate game, but it's very light. And when I first started playing it, I was actually amazed how light it was, and didn't think I was going to like it. And played it once, put it away, and didn't think about it again until someone came round and they said, "Oh, I wouldn't mind having a go at playing it." So I got it out again, and we started playing again. I actually saw a bit more strategy to it. It's still light, but it was actually really fun. It's really screw over other people, because what happens is you're controlling both navy boats, your own merchant boat, and your own pirate boat. So your merchant boats trying to get goods and travel from one side of the board to the other without coming across any of your opponent's pirate ships, which will steal your goods and sink your boat if you've got none. You control two kind of community navy boats, which can sink the opponent's pirate boats. So the nice little thing about this, nice big plastic boats in this, and you get cubes, which are the goods, and they're all different colours depending on the goods, and they actually go inside the boats, which is really nice feature of it. And your boats just move across the board. You basically play down a card which tells you what navy boat you can move, how many spaces, and then what pirate boat. No, you move your pirate boat number of spaces, and then your merchant boat. And it is all about trying to get doubloons to pay for your upgrade cards, which make you stronger and faster, and do weird and wonderful things, till you can unlock your fifth card, which is basically the end game card, and whoever unlocks that card wins the game, unless it's a tie, and then it goes down to how much money you have left. Very good game, to the point that I actually painted up my ships, and they look lovely and make the game 10 times better.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a fan of Merchants and Marauders, so it sounds it does interest me, although obviously only Merchants and Marauders, so I kind of already got a game like that, I suppose. But yeah, it looks pretty. It does look pretty.
It's good. I'm going to try it out with my daughter, because it's quite light. I think they would be able to pick it up quite well. So it might be a good one with the kids.
Thanks, Joel. The game I wanted to talk about is called Galaxy Defenders. Now, Now, I have to give credit to one of the listeners to the show, Xavier Fox Shandy, who mentioned last month when we talked about we were going to do XCOM that we should check out a game called Galaxy Defenders. I must admit, it's a game that passed me by, even though it had like a massive Kickstarter campaign about 2 years ago. And it's basically if people are familiar with the XCOM video game, it is the kind of tactical shooter side of that. It's a turn-based miniatures game, basically, very similar to the Wrath of Ashardalon D&D adventure system games. And the thing that strikes me, the most interesting thing about it, other than the fact the theme, which is obviously you're a load of agents taking on a load of aliens, and the fact there's so many different boards and scenarios that comes with it, it's a complete campaign. So you basically create new characters and you take them through various gaming sessions, and you carry the character through. And there's actually an iPad app so you can record all the stats for all of your characters. And obviously, if your character dies, then you have to roll a new character. So it's kind of neat. Very pretty looking. Lots of stuff in the box. Loads of miniatures, lots of tiles and chits and all that kind of stuff. Very varied scenarios ranging from exploration to fighting off waves of aliens. The AI is very clever in the game. They've got 2 card decks. One that activates certain alien types, and the other one that actually then governs where new aliens spawn. And the combat is really clever in that you roll a set of D8s, and for every hit you get on those D8s, the aliens or you, if they're attacking you, you roll the same number of dice in defense. So if I roll and get 4 hits, then you roll 4 defense dice to see if you block those hits. It's a really elegant, simple mechanic, which makes the game really easy to teach and play. So thumbs up to that. I was, again, it passed me by, but it is a beautifully designed and elegant game, and definitely someone to check out if you fancy that sort of thing. So let's move on to our featured game this month, which is XCOM. Right, Andy, start with yourself. Is this a game you've actually had a chance to play yet?
Not yet, no, because funnily enough, after we done the last Unplugged, my wife was listening to the show and she went, "Oh, that game that you were talking about, how would you like that for your birthday?" So I need to wait another month until I can play it.
Wow.
Well, I do know someone who did get it for their birthday, which is Stephen Thompson Jones, who now hails from Denmark, who, again, friend of the show's, been a listener for many years. Both he and his wife Linda, she bought him a copy for his birthday last month. So I did ask him to let us know how it's going. I'll just read out what he wrote. These were his thoughts on his first couple of games. He's written. Times mechanic, whilst adding a level of stress often not seen, seems to be the only really suited to 4-player, otherwise too much. But grabs the essence of XCOM perfectly, in some ways emphasising the global situation better than its digital cousin. So, those are his thoughts, but Joel, what is XCOM the board game?
Well, XCOM the board game is XCOM Enemy Within. Is that the one? Or Unknown?
Enemy Unknown, yeah.
That's it. So it's taken... Not all of it, because you don't do the kind of strategic moving the troops around the battlefield and shooting. It's all about kind of being the headquarters of XCOM itself and placing your stuff out when stuff comes in and starts not attacking you, but aliens start swarming over continents and over in orbit. The science guys need to start researching new technologies and getting you more upgrades and making you better. The commanders trying to keep control of the budget, and someone else. Oh yeah, the squad leader is basically trying to defend the base with squad little figures and doing missions, which is all about just selecting a couple of guys to go on it and rolling dice and hoping you're not going to roll that dreaded 1, 2, or 3, or hopefully you're going to roll some actually XCOM symbols, because it's very tough, because a 2 in 6 chance of rolling a success on these dice. So it's quite low. You need to roll at least 3 dice, but every time you play stuff out, it costs you money. So you've got to be aware how much you're spending and how many troops you're putting out. to kind of combat the aliens coming in. It is tense.
Well,
yeah, carry on. Yeah,
before we get into our thoughts, a couple of other things just to point out. So if you've played the video game, either XCOM, Enemy Unknown, the recent one, or the original XCOM years back, then what this game is, which is a surprise to a lot of people, I think, is that this is actually the running the base part of XCOM. So as Joel said, it's not the tactical turn-based shooter, it's the strategic part of managing your base, managing worldwide panic, allocating resources to different continents. If you played the recent game, then satellites were key in that game, and they are in this one. You have satellites, as Joel said, you can deploy troops to different places. But it is basically running your base. And the unique thing is that the artificial intelligence for this game is an iPad app or a tablet app. And the game is played over two parts. One is a timed phase where all of the players are trying to coordinate their activity and communicate in real time whilst the app is counting down and telling them what to do. And then there's a resolution phase, which is the bit Joel's just talking about there, where you're rolling dice. And as Joel said, the odds are really stacked against you. So it's all about trying to coordinate effectively and to build up your reserves and your resources early so that you can mitigate those dice rolls in later rounds. And those familiar with ball games, the best description I've heard of this game is it's Pandemic mixed with Space Alert. Because essentially the board game part of it is Pandemic, but you're against the clock.
That was going to be my question, actually, as to what type of category it would fit into. And I think that sums, from what I've read and from what I've seen people playing it sums it up pretty well.
It is Pandemic, but as Joel was about to say before I interrupt him there, this is the most stressful game I think I've ever played. I've played this now with 3 different groups, and I've had 4 or 5 games now. We haven't won yet, but we've been half a turn away from winning twice. And after we've played it, we are basically exhausted. That's what this game does to you. It is an exhausting, stressful, tiring game. It's not, if you don't want to start your night playing this game, this is one to leave as the last game of the evening, the hour before, hour and a half before you finish up, because it's just full on. It's unbelievably stressful, which it is in the game, in the video game. So they've captured the essence of the video game perfectly.
Yeah. I think it's like some bits of it, because like you say, you got time phased and you got the resolution phase. You can get asset cards, which each department starts with, but they could be only used in the time phase or only used in the resolution phase. But in the time phase, it's like knowing when to use those cards. Even tech cards that you get to research might have a time phase, only time you can use it. And it's knowing when to use those cards at the right time before the timer runs out. Because if you don't use those cards when the timer ends, that's it. You've missed a chance maybe of opening or relieving some of the pressure that's elsewhere on the board. And it's like, remember, you got those cards, you've got to use those cards now. And then timer ends, that's it, it's over with. So that's another tense bit about it.
Yeah, there's tension everywhere. There's the fact you've only got limited money. You start off the game with cash and you have a reserve, and every round you get more money. You get income, but your income falls like in the video game, as continents fall into panic because you're unable to protect them properly because you have limited resources. You're always having to make a call as to, are we going to bother to defend that? Are we going to spend our money to put interceptors? We'll send interceptors to the United States, or to put satellites in orbit. Or are we going to use the money to defend the base? You've never got enough money to do all of those things.
No.
And it's all about trying to manage risk, basically. And when you're trying to do that whilst it's being timed and everyone's trying to shout at each other, and the last 3 times I've played it, I've been banker basically, and I've been saying to them, look, you've got no budget for that. You can't spend any money. I've got no money to give you. You can't do that. It's a brilliantly designed game. I mean, I was dismissive about the iPad app, but if it didn't have that, it just wouldn't have the level of tension.
No.
And if it did what Space Alert does, which is have a CD, which of course you can play on your mobile if you want, even that doesn't compare to the way the iPad app sort of barks at you and warns you, and
Well, it's complete random. There's so many different random elements to it.
Well, you say that, but it's not totally random, is it? Because you have to input at the end of each round in the iPad app what the current status is, and it will use that to sort of, it's like it decides, right, I'm going to poke you with a stick. You've clearly not done this well enough, so I'm going to make it even worse for you. So it is random in some regards, but in others, it's intelligent enough to make decisions based on what you've done.
Well, what I mean is, like, Space Alert is audio, so you're going to know what the missions are after some time of playing it. Where this one will just basically throw in another spanner in the works and say, "Yeah, you're doing too well now. Let's up the ante a bit," kind of.
Yeah.
Thing. And I mean, I actually have won it about 3 times early on easy, because each time I'm playing it with new people. So I just stick on easy, spend about good half an hour explaining everything and going through the first round, explaining everything before we actually get into the flow of it. I would want to knock it up to medium, but yeah, I've won it a few times, and seems quite easy when I have won, because suddenly they just keep chucking UFOs onto one continent. And it's like, well, let's just let it go into panic, because you can let one go into panic and just keep an eye on the others, kind of thing. So, yeah.
So just on that, Joel, when you're training and showing people, does it suffer from the same thing as Pandemic when you try and teach that for the first time, that you effectively turn into an alpha player and try and dictate to other people what they should be doing, as opposed to having that learning experience? Or does it sort of give you a blend that says, here you go, you're not going to be alpha, but you can help and guide?
Yes, at the first it is, when you're trying to explain everything. And like I said, the first round, maybe the second round, when they're all new and all green to it, you're kind of, I'm always pausing it and explaining stuff and saying, right, you want to do this next. I mean, if like the commander has the ability to upgrade one of your troops to an elite, and I'm always saying, take a sniper. Sniper is one of the better ones. Take them first, upgrade them, or telling the science guy which tech that we need first, kind of thing. I mean, sometimes I actually take the science guy roll over, because there's so many cards you're looking at one time, and knowing what they all do, it's like, right, I'll do this role, everyone else can concentrate on the other role.
Yeah. For new players, so the science role that Joel's talking about there, you basically have a deck of cards and you're choosing cards from them to research. And if unless you've played the game a few times, you don't really know which ones are useful and which ones aren't. That's the problem with that.
Yeah.
I think, Andy, what you're talking about there, it's almost impossible for this game to have an alpha player, because during the time phase, you're so busy doing your own thing, you can't really start telling other people what to do. I mean, the way the app works is it will say, okay, the commander, you've now got to do this, or the scientist, you can now select one research item. But the problem is, if you are trying to do everyone else's turn for them, you'll never have time to sit there and think about what you're going to do, because any minute now you'll be called on to make a decision, and because it's timed, you need to have decided what you're going to do before it actually happens. So it's very, very difficult. It kind of mitigates that alpha player because of that.
That sounds like a good mechanic. I like that, and the way that Joel's explained it is that you can give leverage as to, I'm a little bit more experienced than you. As a scientist, you should do this, and this, and your upgrades, you should be doing X, Y, and Z. But I like the idea that it puts that added pressure on you to take away the need for somebody to be alpha. So I do like that. It's encouraging to hear.
I think the trouble I came across this weekend was that I gave someone, I've known him for a good few weeks, so he goes to the club regularly, and I gave him, was it, no, not Commander, the orange one? What was that?
That's the
Central Officer.
Central Officer, yeah, the iPad.
Yeah, he controls the iPad and he controls the satellites, because I thought it's quite an easy task. He just needs to read everything out on the iPad, and when he gets a bit stronger, he starts using these satellites more. So I gave him that, and then I started realizing that he's actually quite learning difficulties, because he didn't know what any of the continents were, which was quite important, where the UFOs were popping up. And then he was like, Research 11. Research 11? Oh, Research 2. So it was like, okay, probably not the best one to be doing the app and that. So, yeah.
I mean, I've played it with new players. All the people I've played with, it's been new for them. And I think the first game they played, they really did struggle with whatever role they were given. Really, it is a pretty steep learning curve, but the game is relatively short, so
Yeah,
a lot of people do want to give it another go once they've played it the first time. But like I said, the main sort of feedback I've had is I'd love to give that another go next week. They don't want to play it straight away because it is so
When
exhausting.
you've forgotten it.
Yeah, well, yeah. And as Joel said, I mean, I've not had it as easy as what Joel's had it by the sound of it. I've never had a situation where it keeps hitting the same continent.
no,
But like I said, we've actually won the game on the same turn that we've lost the game twice. So it shows you how finely balanced the game actually is. We've not been using the pause button. I've tried to keep it so it is timed. We should mention that on the easy difficulty, as you said, Joe, you can actually pause during the time phase, which is quite nice. On medium and above, you can't, and you're given a limited amount of pause on medium. I've not played it, but I think it's like 10 minutes or something.
I think also if it gets to certain points where it is counting down, and when it gets to 0, it doesn't move past it. It will just stay there. So that's what
easy,
I found.
on easy it does, but on medium you've got a pause timer, and you've got a limited amount of that. And then after that, if you exhaust your pause, then basically that step you lose it, and it will do other bad things to you.
There's an important mechanic I think we both missed out, is like when we said about rolling the blue dice, which is the XCOM dice, which you need to roll successes on. You're also rolling the alien dice, which is an 8-sided dice. And basically, if you start at threat 1 on your first roll, and if you roll 1 or lower, you lose. You lose whatever task you're doing, like science researching, you lose your scientists. If you're rolling for combating UFOs in orbit or above a country, you lose all your interceptors. Same thing with your troops. You lose them, they die. And every time you choose to roll again, the threat level raises. So if you're rolling 2 or lower, you lose. And that's a really nasty aspect of it, that you lose the whole lot you put into it.
Yeah, it's a push your luck mechanic, basically. I know when I've played it, people who are very into sort of games and probability and stuff, they're like, basically, as soon as it gets to threat level 3, which means basically on a D8, if you roll 3 or less, you've had it. They're like, no, don't roll it.
No.
Yeah. So, but there's things you can do to mitigate it. And as you mentioned, a lot of those cards you research, some of those give you, and some of the assets give you re-rolls on that red die, which are kind of vital. Yeah. And there's things later on that help. So a lot of the cards allow you to roll extra dice, which is really the main mitigator. Because if you're managing to roll 4 or 5 dice on that first roll, as well as that red one, then you've only got a 1 in 8 chance of failure. So it then gets rid of a lot of that chancey rolling. But it does get tense. Sometimes you have to just take a chance, don't you, Joel? I mean, if you're defending the base and you've had 3 re-rolls already, and you think, sod it, we're just going to have to go for it. And it has that element to it. It's even when you're doing the resolution phase, which isn't timed, it's stressful.
Yeah. So. Well, you can get tech that does automatic successes on certain stuff, which are nice, for the troops mainly, and there's a couple for doing research. But you usually have to assign people to the task, so you can then get the automatic success, which doesn't push the threat level up. It just okay, automatic success. Now we can roll. It's nice when you start building up the research around people. But yeah, very clever.
We've got a listener contribution now from Justin Smith. He wrote to us at GameBurst, and he's put in his email, XCOM the Ball Game was in hot anticipation at the Swindon Ball Game group, and I already had 4 people waiting to play it before I unboxed it. We finally sat down and we quickly found that it's best to sit the 4 players around the square board with 1 on each side, with the positions dictating according to the role that they were playing. As you would expect, we followed the app through the tutorial, which walks you through the first 2 rounds. We found this took us 45 minutes. We expected to be in for the long haul, but we were the safety wheels came off, and we found that we could race through each turn like excited kids, making snap decisions during the timed phase in an effort not to leech time off the next player. During the resolution phase, we generally felt that the 1/3 chance of a roll success on the dice proved brutally difficult for us to keep the base defended. And unfortunately, we are 2-0 on games so far. We're hoping to change that pattern tonight. As someone who has thoroughly enjoyed the recent video games, Enemy Unknown, Enemy Within, I was wary of how this would translate to the board. I expected it to be more like Space Crusade, with squad deployment and turn-based combat. I have to say I'm glad that this wasn't the case, as giving people their own job to pursue creates a lot more involvement and ownership of the actions that you perform to help the group. And the artwork in the cards and the app are lifted straight from the 2K game. Too often, though, we ended up with all our soldiers killed fighting the tougher enemies, leaving our base undefended. I think next time we won't be aggressively pursuing technology over upgrading and reinforcing our squad, although I'll be interested to hear how you guys have approached your strategy and your overall success rate. My summary would be that this game hates you on a level that I haven't seen since pandemic, and that is a good thing. The app works well to give you a sense of urgency, and the push-your-luck approach with dice rolling gives the squad leader plenty of work and worry about the risk versus reward. I can see it coming back to the table often, as a limited player number means we will have to wait their turn to play. One vitally important tip, though, don't forget what each player's special abilities are. Using the Sky Ranger card to cancel off Kill 2 Soldiers crisis can prove essential. Thanks for reading, and I look forward to hearing the show. So thanks, Justin. Okay, I just want to finish up by just mentioning the designer. So this game is designed by Eric M. Lang, who also designed probably one of my favourite games, which is Chaos in the Old World. And also Quarriors and all of the various flavours of Dice Masters that have spun off from that. If you look at his list of games he's designed, it's quite short, but all of the games he's designed are quite brilliant. He seems to be the master of balancing, in particular, variable player powers, which is what you've basically got in both Chaos in the Old World, which we've talked about many times on this show, and this game, because obviously whichever role you're taking on, it's a completely different set of abilities, but they all complement each other. So the scientist is helping out in terms of providing extra tech for the other people, and the commander is helping out by balancing the budget and upgrading units and things like that. So it's very, very cleverly designed. He's a brilliant designer. He's definitely the master of this type of game where every player has a different role to play. You looking forward to it then, Andy?
To be perfectly honest, you guys told me on it last month, and I'm trying not to be a little bit jealous right now. So, yes, I do like my challenging games. And from what you were saying, as much as we're comparing it to Pandemic, etc., I feel physically exhausted after a game of Eldritch or Arkham Horror, and it sounds like I'm going to be putting this game in that category.
Much the same, but in a lot less time. You'll be exhausted after 50 minutes on average, I would say. It's a pretty quick game. Right, okay, so that's our review of XCOM. Anyway, if any listeners, if any of you guys pick it up, it is widely available. It's probably going to be the year's best-selling game, I would imagine, based on orders and number of people I know who've bought it. So do let us know. You can get in touch with us on Twitter at GameBurst, on Facebook at facebook.com/GameBurst, and also you can email us pod@gameburst.co.uk.